Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Folks, hi, this is Cesar. Welcome back. As I said, we have a pretty serious topic this evening. Virginia, through Governor McAuliffe's initiatives, we're looking at new gun safety measures. You heard from our first guest. Next, we have Mike Doucette. He is a 30-year attorney in the Lynchburg Commonwealth Attorney's Office. Actually, he is an award-winning past president of the Virginia Association of Commonwealth Attorneys. He also serves on many committees, including the Virginia State Crime Commission and the Virginia Criminal Justice Service Board. He has chaired the Proactive Order Subcommittee of the Governor's Domestic Violence Prevention Advisory Board. Mike, thank you for joining us.
Cesar, it's great to be here.
Pretty serious topic here.
It is.
And in Virginia, I read a brief outline, both of the governor's announcement and some details. Why is this such an issue for people to grasp? I'm confused.
Well, in Virginia, we do not make it illegal for someone who's been convicted of a domestic violence misdemeanor to possess a firearm. There's a federal law that prohibits it, but there's nothing in Virginia that
So in the
prohibits
state, if I am reckless driving, I lose my license.
Correct.
But if I'm reckless with a gun or with physical abuse, I don't lose privileges?
So long as it's a misdemeanor. You would lose your privilege if it was a felony, but in Virginia, it doesn't become a domestic violence felony until it's the third offense. And even then, the first time is a deferred disposition. So literally, someone can go, it won't be to their fourth instance of domestic violence.
Four strikes and you're out.
Four strikes within 20 years that you get the felony at that particular point, and you're barred from possessing a firearm in Virginia. Now, there is a federal law that prohibits one who's been convicted of domestic violence misdemeanor from possessing a firearm. But one of the problems that we have is that relies on a federal prosecution. Federal prosecutors are, since 9/11, have been very focused on international terrorism. And it's a very cumbersome process. It doesn't say that they can't do a prosecution for possessing a firearm after being convicted of domestic violence, but they're not likely to do it. And so it's not a very effective tool. On the flip side of that is because Virginia does not take away gun rights on a domestic violence misdemeanor, Virginia has no mechanism for restoring those gun rights. And so basically someone who's been convicted of a misdemeanor domestic violence is prohibited from possessing a firearm for life.
Gotcha.
Under the federal laws.
I can see how some people would be all up in angst about that.
So with the legislation that's being proposed, there's actually something for everyone. There's some obviously some much more directed prosecution through Commonwealth's attorneys throughout the state, but there's also that mechanism for the gun rights folks. There's that mechanism to say, hey, let's look at having a way to restore those particular gun rights. We take gun rights away from felons, but we have a mechanism for restoring those rights for felons. We don't have that mechanism for those folks who've been convicted of domestic violence misdemeanors. And so what we're looking for is something that, like I say, really has something for everyone. Maybe nobody likes it all, but everybody gets something out of it. And that's
so
what we're looking at.
What's the argument for allowing, or what's the rationale? Because I can't come up with one if you've been convicted. To be able to purchase whatever arms you.
You know, I certainly can't advocate for it.
There's a pattern here. We're not a single, drunken stupor.
I heard in the last General Assembly session somebody argue that a domestic violence victim can just punch him back. That was it was astounding to hear that being said in the Courts of Justice committees. And that was the rationale of that's why we should not take away gun possession rights for those who've been convicted of these misdemeanors. But these are as Doucette just showed us in the last segment. I mean, these can be obviously that was would have been a felony, but you punch your significant other in the eye and you get basically a deferred disposition the first time. You do it a second time and a third time, and it's just misdemeanors.
Right.
And so literally it's the fourth time before we in Virginia take any particular action. That's why we think we need to take some action now.
Well, I'm still amazed at some of the opposition to this. What do you see on the horizon? What do you see that's coming here?
Well, it was. And some of certainly your next guest, Senator Favola, has been offering bills in the past General Assembly sessions that have not been able to get anywhere because there was. Let's just say the law was against us. But the Supreme Court of the United States in March of this year decided a case called United States versus Castleman. And in that particular case, they said that Virginia's law, misdemeanor domestic violence law, could be used for a federal prosecution. So we do have that avenue to us again. We lost it for about 4 years. There was a case that was decided by the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in 2010. And so we sort of lost that avenue. But now we're actually holding cards in our hand when we go into the General Assembly session for 2015. And so again, because federal law basically prohibits someone from possessing a firearm for life, if we have a mechanism to take away those gun rights and then restore those gun rights, like I say, there's something there for everyone. So I'm very optimistic that in this session we can start having a real meaningful dialogue with folks across the political spectrum.
You know, it's an interesting dilemma here because some of the same people I've heard argue against any type of measures for gun safety. They bring up this issue on restoring the rights, but they're not so supportive when you're trying to restore someone's voting rights. Right, so that group we don't want to help. This group we have to help.
You know, it's amazing because in Virginia we do have a mechanism for those who've been convicted of a felony to not only get their civil rights back, and actually it's been accelerated over the years, but there is a mechanism to get your gun rights back if you've been convicted of a felony. That it requires you get your civil rights restored first by the governor, and once you do that, then you can petition the circuit court to get your gun rights back. We do that for felons and have done that for felons for a number of years. We have not done that for those who've been convicted of domestic violence misdemeanors because we've never taken their gun rights away. And so that's why I say this sort of legislation, I think stands a real good chance, hopefully this year, that because, again, we take away those rights so that we can prosecute it within the state system. We have Commonwealth attorneys who deal with domestic violence on a daily basis, prosecuting these particular cases, so we can get the Commonwealth attorneys and not the U.S. attorneys involved in this. And at the same time, like I say, we offer at the end of a period of time a mechanism that would allow these folks to petition. It's a petition. It's still up to the judge to decide whether or not to grant those rights back, but give them that mechanism to try to get those rights back.
Can you share with us some of your day in the life stories, or some of the things that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis that are good and bad? I mean,
well, the one thing that when you become the elected Commonwealth's attorney is you don't try cases like you used to. But the one thing I can say, I've been doing this for 30 years, and 30 years ago, and I think I'm echoing some of what Doucette was talking about. 30 years ago, as a junior person, I was sent to juvenile domestic relations court because that's where the junior person went. We did not take it seriously back then. And for 3 years, I prosecuted domestic violence along with juvenile crimes and all the various crimes that happened there. I wasn't trained on how to do that. It was I knew how to try a case, but I wasn't trained in the circle of violence that goes on, the cycle of violence that goes on in domestic violence cases.
Wow.
And so in Lynchburg, we started to see the light probably about 20 years ago, and actually I have to thank my wife for that. My wife's a retired domestic violence prosecutor. Came into our office originally and then went to a neighboring office. But it's folks like my wife who are dedicated to being domestic violence prosecutors, and these are tough cases to try. I mean, I've tried murder cases, I've tried drug cases, I've tried the whole range of cases. Domestic violence cases are some of the hardest cases to try because many times the victims, for a number of reasons, don't want to go forward with the prosecution, and yet we as prosecutors want to to break that cycle of violence and give them the help that we possibly can. So like when Lisette was talking about she didn't know about this and she didn't know about that, I mean that's one of the things that we're working on very hard is to get the word out about safety plans and get the word out about what is available to you as a victim. And it doesn't necessarily require locking the abuser up. I mean, at some point, obviously, if it persists, that's the option. But so many of these victims are looking for basically to make the violence stop, but they're economically dependent on their abuser, and so
are the support structures in place, or are they funded?
They're there. They're you know, obviously we'd like to see more funding. Everything with prosecution right now is underfunded. Bob Horan, who was the Commonwealth attorney here in Fairfax County for decades, always said that in Virginia we do prosecution on the cheap. And we have. I mean, in Virginia, we are about 140 prosecutors short of what our staffing standards call for.
Really?
So, you know, we'd love to see the staffing standards up. But when it comes to domestic violence, you know, we are seeing the funding. A lot of it comes from the Federal Department of Justice, but some of it also comes from the State Department of Criminal Justice Services. So we do have the programs out there. But even if we don't have the funding, I mean, we've got victim witness folks in our office who are going to do what they can to get the word out, to make people safe, to get them into shelters if necessary. But we're going to do all we can to break the cycle of violence.
What are some of the things you want to have our viewers remember or take away or be knowledgeable about?
You know, the one thing is that there are answers out there. If someone is a victim of domestic violence, there are answers out there. You don't have to go it alone. There's lots of people who want to help, and by help, I don't mean necessarily lock the abuser up. I mean, a lot of the victims are very, very worried that they're going to lose the breadwinner or they're going to lose. You know, they just want him to stop, or her. Right. Stop with the violence, and so we do have anger management classes that are available. We do have domestic violence shelters if necessary. We have a whole range of services that run from just, you know, getting involved and getting you some information all the way up to putting the abuser in jail. But there is a whole range of services that are available. Just, you know, reach out to us and we'll reach back out to you and do everything we can to help.
Are we going to get this done?
I hope so. I'm like I say, because of this Supreme Court case that was decided in March, I think we have a lot more, have many more cards in our hand than we had even last year during the 2014 General Assembly session.
Well, we're making progress.
We are.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Cesar, thank you for having me.
Folks, again, this is a very important topic. Please come back. We've got a couple more segments. Senator Favola is up next. We'll be right back. Again, thank you.